You know that feeling on payday where, your bank app lights up for like 5 seconds and then somehow everything just evaporates again? One moment you are thinking, yes, finally, breathing room, and 2 days later you are staring at your balance like, what on earth happened? If you have ever had that mix of excitement and guilt when your paycheck hits, you are not broken. You are just human. Your brain was never designed for automatic money decisions, so if you do not have a routine, the default is chaos. My name is Andy, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, so you do not have to. And in this video, I want to give you something extremely practical. Not a complicated spreadsheet, not a 20-step plan, just a simple routine you run every single time you get paid. Almost like a little checklist in your head. You follow it in the same order again and again until it feels boring. Because when money feels boring, that is usually when it finally starts working. I want you to imagine that every paycheck is like a tiny river flowing into your life. Most people just let it spill everywhere. A bit on food, a bit on rent, a bit on random Amazon stuff at midnight, and the rest just kind of leaks out of your account without you really knowing where it went. The routine I am going to walk you through is basically building small channels for that river so it flows exactly where you actually want it to go. When you get that right, your stress drops way faster than you think. And here is the big mindset shift that makes this work. Payday is not a reward. It is not this magical hearty day where you finally get to treat yourself because you survived another 2 weeks. Payday is a tiny board meeting between you and your future self. Every time you get paid, you are casting votes. You are either voting for present you to feel good for 48 hours, or you are voting for future you to not be stressed for the next 40 years. When you see it that way, the routine you follow on payday matters way more than any stock pick or side hustle idea. Over 10 years, that is 240 chances to either move your net worth up or keep it stuck. If you are in your 20s or 30s, you might have 50 or 6 years of paychecks ahead of you. That is literally over 1,000 repetitions of this routine. You do not need to be perfect even half of the time for this to change everything. You just need to be a little bit less chaotic, again and again. So here is the plan for the rest of this video, so you know where we are going. I am going to walk you through one simple routine you can run in about 10 to 15 minutes every single time money hits your account. It has 4 big moves. First, you check. Second, you protect. Third, you grow. Fourth, you enjoy. Check, protect, grow, enjoy. That is it. I will show you exact percentages, some example numbers, what this looks like if you are in debt, and how this routine changes as you stack more income. By the end, I want you to have something you could literally write on a sticky note above your desk. Alright, let us start with move number 1 every payday, which almost nobody does. Before you spend a single dollar, you pause. This is like taking a breath before you speak. You open your banking app, you look at the paycheck that just came in, and you say out loud if you have to. Here is how much came in, here is what has to go out, here is what I am deciding on purpose this time. It sounds silly, but there is research in behavioral psychology that shows naming what is happening in the moment gives your brain just enough space to make a better choice. That 2-second pause is the difference between autopilot and intention. From that check moment, the routine really starts. The first question you ask yourself is, what does my survival need from this paycheck? Not my Netflix, not my brunch. Survival, roof, food, transportation, basic bills. If you add those up and they are, say, $2,000 a month and you get paid twice a month, that means every paycheck, the first $1,000 of take-home pay, already has a job. You are not deciding that reality is. Seeing that clearly stops the illusion that your full paycheck is available to blow the moment it hits your account, and that alone calms you down a bit. Now here is where we add the second move in the routine, protect. Protect means 2 things. You protect your present with an emergency buffer, and you protect your future with automatic saving and investing. The harsh reality is that one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck is not lack of income, it is lack of cushion. One unexpected car repair, one medical bill, one layoff, and the whole house of cards collapses. So in this routine, after you have covered survival, the next chunk of every paycheck goes to building a small emergency fund until you hit your first target. If you are starting from zero, a simple target is $1,000 in a separate savings account you do not touch. You can break it down. If you decide you are going to put $100 from every paycheck into that buffer, then in about 5 months, you have that first $1,000. If you bump it to $150, you get there in less than 4 months. That is the kind of back-of-the-napkin math I want you to get used to doing on Payday. Not can I kind of maybe save whatever is left, but exactly how many paychecks until this specific goal is done. Once you are slowly building that emergency buffer, you add the second part of protect, which is paying yourself for the future every single time money lands. If your employer offers a retirement match, this is where your routine gets insanely powerful. Say they match up to 4% of your paycheck. That means if you earn $4,000 a month, putting in $160 per paycheck into the retirement account gets you another $160 for free. Over a year, that is over $3,000 of employer money flowing through that little routine channel you built, just for checking a box once. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Andy, I can barely get through the month, and you want me to send money to 50 or 60-year-old me. And I get it, I really do. So here is how I want you to think about it. Even a small percent, like 3 or 5% of your take-home pay invested consistently, is not about you becoming a millionaire next year. It is about building the identity of someone who pays themselves first. That identity change might be worth more than the actual account balance in the first few years, because it changes every decision that comes after. The third move in the routine is where things start to feel exciting instead of scary. This is grow. After you have covered survival and done your protect moves, you ask, what can I do with this paycheck that my future self would high-five me for? Sometimes that is extra payments on high-interest debt. Sometimes it is adding a bit more to your investment accounts. Sometimes it is putting money into a skill, a course, or equipment for a side hustle that can raise your income later. The priority here depends on your situation, but the key is grow comes before guilt-free spending. Let's talk about debt for a second, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. If you have high-interest debt, like a credit card charging 20%, then part of your growth step is actually a tag. After you pay survival and minimum payments, you choose an amount from this paycheck that goes directly to one specific debt you are trying to knock out. If you can throw an extra $200 on that card every paycheck, that is $400 a month. Over a year, that is $4,800 of progress on a balance that was quietly trying to snowball against you. The math flips when you combine that with investing over time. If instead of all your extra money going to interest, you slowly shift to sending even a few $100s per month into low-cost index funds, the compounding works for you. At around 7% average annual return, $500 a month over 30 years grows to roughly $600,000. That is not precise to the cent, but it is enough to show how powerful it is when the routine you run on Payday channels tiny pieces of every paycheck into assets instead of into interest. The fourth and final move, which people either skip or overdo, is enjoy. This is your guilt-free money. This is where, after you have checked, protected, and grown a little, you say, all right, whatever is left in this category, I am allowed to enjoy without hating myself. Maybe that is $200 per paycheck that you can use for restaurants, fun, small splurges. Maybe it is $50. The actual number is less important than the rule. You do not touch this category until the other 3 are funded, and once it is spent, it is spent. No borrowing from the future. Here is the crazy thing that happens when you run this 4-move routine every time you get paid. After a few cycles, the emotional charge of Payday goes down. At first, that feels boring or even a little depressing. Where is my thrill? But under the surface, your stress is dropping because there are fewer surprises. You know that when your paycheck hits, this amount is going here, that amount is going there, and what is left is what you actually have to play with. Your nervous system finally gets the memo that someone responsible is in charge. Over time, this routine also becomes your built-in progress tracker. You can literally see your life-changing paycheck by paycheck. 1 month, your emergency fund is $300. A few months later, it is $800, then $1,200. 1 year, your retirement account is a few thousand. A few years later, it is multiple 5 figures. At first, the numbers feel small and almost pointless. Then one day, you realize you just paid a surprise expense without panicking, or you lost your job and your world did not implode. Because past, you ran this boring little routine on repeat. Let me give you a concrete example so you can picture how this works. Imagine you bring home $3,000 every 2 weeks. That is $6,000 a month. You sit down on payday and do your check move. Survival bills, rent, utilities, food, transportation, minimum debt payments add up to about $3,500 per month. So you know that from each paycheck, about $1,750 has to cover those survival costs. You set up an automatic bill pay so that money is spoken for before you can accidentally spend it. Next, protect. You decide your first target is that $1,000 emergency buffer. You choose to send $125 from each paycheck into a separate savings account. That gets you to the goal in 4 paychecks, just under 2 months. You also decide to contribute 5% of your paycheck to your retirement plan, which is $150 per paycheck, and your employer matches 3%, which is another $90 every time. Without doing anything fancy, you just directed $365 per paycheck to present and future protection. Then, grow. You look at your high-interest credit card with a balance of, say, $4,000. You decide that each paycheck, you will send an extra $200 to that card on top of the minimum payment. That is $400 a month. Run that for a year and you have put $4,800 against that balance. Plus, you have crushed a chunk of the interest it was trying to charge you. The card that used to feel permanent starts to look temporary. That feeling of momentum is addicting in the best way. Whatever remains after survival, protect, and grow becomes your enjoy money. Maybe that is $200 per paycheck. That is the money you can blow on a last-minute concert, eating out, random little purchases without guilt. If you spend it all in the first 3 days, that is data. You do not add more from savings or swipe the credit card deeper into the hole. You just sit with that discomfort and let it teach you something. Next paycheck, you might decide to spread it out differently or bump the amount up or down. There is this moment that happens for a lot of people. After a few months of running a routine like this, they realize, oh, I am not actually bad with money. I was just operating with no rules and too much emotion. When you have a clear order for your paycheck, your identity starts to shift. You go from I am terrible with money to I am someone who runs a system. And once that identity locks in, it gets way easier to say no to impulse purchases because saying no is not about restriction. It is about staying in character. Now, you might be wondering, Andy, what if my income is irregular? What if I am in sales or freelancing or doing gig work? This routine still works. You just swap percentages for fixed amounts. Instead of saying $100 to savings from each paycheck, you say 10% of whatever comes in goes to emergency fund until I hit my target. 15% goes to taxes if you are self-employed. A certain percent goes to investments once you are out of high-interest debt. The order stays the same, the numbers flex. Another thing I want you to see is that this routine is not just about where the money goes. It is about where your attention goes. When you check in on payday, you are training your brain to notice numbers instead of avoiding them. When you protect first, you are telling yourself, I deserve stability before comfort. When you grow, you're choosing long-term over short-term. When you enjoy with boundaries, you are proving you can have fun without sabotage. That is a lot of emotional healing baked into a simple 4-step checklist. If that feels a little heavy, let me give you a lighter metaphor. Right now, your paycheck might feel like you are juggling random balls in the air. Every bill is a ball, every subscription is a ball, every impulse buy is a ball, and you are constantly afraid of dropping one. With this routine, you basically decide which balls are allowed in your hands. Survival balls first, then protection balls in a basket off to the side, then a couple of growth balls you intentionally juggle, then 1 or 2 fun balls that you can drop without the world ending. As your income increases, this routine does not really change. That is the beauty of it. If your paycheck doubles one day, you still check, protect, grow, enjoy in that order. The percentages might stay the same, but the actual amounts get bigger, which means your emergency fund fills faster, your investments grow faster, your debt disappears faster, and your guilt-free category feels more generous. The danger when people get raises is lifestyle creep, where every extra dollar quietly flows straight into nicer stuff. This routine acts like a filter, so your raises show up in your net worth, not just your wardrobe. I also want to acknowledge something that almost no one talks about. Sometimes when people start running a routine like this, they feel grief. They look back at years of paychecks and think, if I had done this 10 years ago, I would already have tens of thousands saved or invested. That regret can be heavy. If that is you, hear me on this. The second best time to start is right now. You cannot go back and rerun old paydays, but you can decide that from this paycheck forward, you are a person with a routine. You can even make this a little ritual. On payday, grab a coffee, take 5 minutes, open your accounts, and run through the steps. Speak them out loud if you have to. Check, protect, grow, enjoy. The repetition matters. Athletes warm up the same way, pilots use the same checklist, good investors use the same decision rules. You are doing the same thing with your money. Little by little, the chaos turns into a pattern, and that pattern starts to create real options in your life. If you want to take this further, you can start naming your accounts after the jobs they do. Instead of just savings, you call it safety fund. Instead of just brokerage, you call it freedom fund. Instead of just a random checking account, you have one called bills and another called fun. Then, on payday, you're not just dragging numbers around, you're literally funding safety, funding freedom, funding fun. Your brain responds to names, and if you make it visual and simple, your routine becomes something you actually look forward to. The last thing I will leave you with is this. Money routines are not about perfection. They are about reps. There will be paychecks where everything goes wrong. An emergency hits, your car blows up, you forget to follow the plan, and it feels like you are back at zero. You are not. Every time you run the routine, even imperfectly, you are strengthening the habit. You are teaching your brain, on payday, we do not just react, we decide. 1 year of that will change more in your life than a decade of random money hacks. So here is your challenge. Take your very next paycheck, no matter how small or messy, and run this simple sequence. Check what is coming in and what has to go out. Protect your present with a buffer and your future with at least a tiny contribution to savings or retirement. Grow by attacking one high-interest debt or adding a bit more to investments or skills. Enjoy what is left on purpose, without guilt and without going over. Then do it again, and again, and again. That is how boring little routines quietly build a life that feels very different. If you got any value from this, if it helped you see your paycheck a little differently or gave you one idea you are actually going to use, please subscribe to keep our channel running and so we can keep making more stuff like this for you.